For this set of psychopaths, who were all doing a forever sentence, killing people wasn't enough. They had to inflict the horror of grape on them as well. And hey, in 2 cases, the grape took place after the victim was dead. Enjoy. Wayne Couzens was allowed to appeal his whole life order for the murder that he committed in March 2021. However, in the space of less than 10 seconds, the Court of Appeal dismissed his appeal.
Couzens seeks leave to appeal against sentence. In his case, we grant leave to appeal against sentence but dismiss the appeal.
Wayne Couzens was a Metropolitan Police officer. In March 2021, he did a bogus arrest of a 33-year-old marketing executive called Sarah Everard, stopping her on the street and telling her that as she was out on the street, she was in breach of COVID restrictions and she had to go with him to the police station. What he in fact did was to drive her out of London and all the way down to Kent, grape her and then strangle her to death with his police belt. He then burnt her body in a fridge in some wood. It was in an area of some woodland that he actually owned. Now viewer, if I've got you hooked on the story so far, do subscribe, give the video a like, drop a comment when you're ready and donate. Hit the thanks button below, I'll appreciate you. When Couzens was arrested, which took place in his very home on the 9th of March 2021, 6 days after he did what he did, he was completely taken by surprise. The man must have known that he was going to get caught. He doesn't seem to have taken into account the presence of CCTV or done anything to protect himself against it. He used his mobile. The data would obviously incriminate him. And keep in mind that this isn't just any old bog standard criminal. This was a police officer, somebody who knows about investigation techniques and so on, so he should have been more clued up on covering his tracks than the average basic bog standard criminal. Then again, we're glad he wasn't. We're glad that he failed to cover his tracks, because thanks to his failure to cover his tracks, he got caught. Anyway, because he wasn't expecting it, or at the very least, he possibly wasn't expecting it quite so soon, he was wholly unprepared. So listen to the joke of the story that he gave the police when he admitted to abducting Sarah. This is his explanation of what he did.
Well, I am in financial shit, and I've been lent on by, I don't know who they are. They're a group, a gang, whatever. And they told me, right, I need to go and pick up girls and give them to them. There's a couple of names. I was told a place to take her. That's it. That is all I know.
There was a subsequent inquiry into the behaviour of Wayne Couzens during his career as a police officer, and it was concluded that there were so many missed opportunities to disrupt and halt the man's offending. He did things like flashing on a number of occasions. He was addicted to extreme pornography and tried to get his colleagues to watch it with him. He had a warning at one point for being excessively violent during an arrest. He went missing at one point. He was in loads and loads of debt, and when that happens, a police officer can be kicked out of the force because having money problems makes them more susceptible to bribery and corruption.
The inquiry has seen evidence that Couzens allegedly committed a very serious sexual assault against a child, barely in her teens, before his policing career even started. Problems with money also predated his career with the police. Couzens had substantial unsecured debt by the time he was arrested for Sarah's murder. At the same time, the Metropolitan Police Service were taking action to recover up to £15,000 that had been paid to him in error, and a year-long mortgage holiday was about to expire that month. It is alleged that on a number of occasions, Couzens tried to show friends and colleagues pornography, including some of a violent and extreme nature. It is further alleged that on at least 2 occasions, he shared unsolicited photographs of his penis with young women, and that he paid female online retailers to masturbate into clothes and send them to him. Since his conviction for Sarah's abduction, rape and murder, Couzens has been convicted of further crimes of indecent exposure. one of which he had already been linked to while a serving police officer.
Couzens got his whole life order in 2021. Levi Bellfield is literally evil by name. Born in 1968, he's a serial killer, a sex offender, a grapist, a kidnapper and a burglar. He's also a woman beater. He had numerous relationships which spawned him, I think, 10 or 11 children, and many of those relationships collapsed because he used to beat the you-know-what out of his girlfriend and wives. He was married to some of them and just living with others just as a boyfriend and girlfriend set up. In 2008, he was convicted of the murders of Marsha McDonnell and Emily de la Grange and of the attempted murder of Kate Sheedy, and he got a whole life order. And then in 2011, he was found guilty of the murder of schoolgirl Millie Dowler, and he again received a whole life order for that murder as well. So he's got 2 whole life orders, and he was in fact the first prisoner in the UK to receive 2 whole life orders.
Did you get a kick out of being involved in these sort of inquiries?
No comment.
Do you think it's a macho type of thing to be here?
No.
Do you think it will help your notoriety?
No comment.
Do you honestly believe that your actions over the 21st and the 22nd of March 2002 are the actions of an innocent man?
No comment.
Then are you an innocent man?
No comment.
Because if you are, tell us.
No comment.
And give us that explanation for where you were and what you were doing.
No comment.
Are you able to do that, Leroy?
No comment.
Sarah's told you what she believes you did that particular day, and I wholly support what she says. I believe you took her off the street that day. I believe your motivation was sexual, and I believe you took her back to Collingwood Place, and I believe you killed her there. That's the truth, isn't it?
No comment, sir.
That's what happened.
No comment.
And then you've used the day of next year to move her body. Is that the truth?
No.
Because that's what's happened, isn't it?
No comment.
And then sometime over the following few days, you've driven down to Hampshire, an area that you know, and you've dumped her body.
No comment, sir.
That's the truth, isn't it?
No comment, sir.
He once, as a child, had SHX with a rabbit, and afterwards he broke the rabbit's neck. His original surname was none other than Rabbit, RABBETTS. He used to sleep with his mother. I don't think they did the thing together, but they used to sleep in the same bed for many, many years. I think well into Levi's teens. And whenever he used to go home and see his mother as an adult, again, he used to sleep in the same bed as her. She wiped his body bot for him until he was around 12. And he also, before he took to murder, was alleged to have committed a number of essays against young girls when he worked as a nightclub bouncer. But even though the man is as thick as you know what, somehow he was always able to destroy the DNA evidence that he left behind, and so he was never caught. And the police in many cases didn't take the allegations from the girls who came forward about him seriously. A lot of them took drugs and stuff like that, and the police really just didn't care. And so that is the story of Levi Bellfield. Stephen Port, who was born in 1975, is not only a serial killer, but also a serial grapist. Between 2014 and 2015, Port murdered 4 young men that he met online. He'd get them to come over to his flat over in Barking in East London, and there he would drug them with GHB, gamma hydroxybutyric acid, quite a well-known date grape drug, and then of course grape them. And all 4 victims died from an overdose of the drug. In the case of one victim, Paul inserted the drug, or rather injected it, directly into the man's you-know-what hole.
So did you have any involvement in the death of the male that we just spoke about a short while ago, Gabriel Klein?
No, I did not.
So, were you involved in administering any drugs or poisons or noxious substances to him?
No, I don't administer drugs to anyone or give drugs to anyone. That's done at the party boy.
Might help if I show you a picture. I'll call this CRT 2. This is Jack Taylor. Do you recognise that, mate?
No. Don't recognise him. I don't pay full attention to the guys' faces when I've painted things to the parties. But I don't recognise his face.
So you don't recognise his face?
I do not know. No.
And I mean, that's Jack Taylor, so you don't recognise
No, I don't.
Jack Taylor?
No.
Paul got his whole life order in 2016. To this day, though, apparently he denies any of the murders.
Down! 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 Don't move! You understand?
Sharp 2-4, stand by. You're under arrest on suspicion of murder. You don't have to say anything, but it may harm your defence. Do not mention any questions.
In November 2024, double murderer Marcus Osborne lost his appeal to have his whole life order overturned. Osborne killed his former girlfriend and her new partner in 2023, in the month of May, in Huddersfield, out of sexual jealousy. His ex-girlfriend, a lady called Katie Hyton, who was 27, sustained all of 99 injuries in the attack from Osborne, while her new boyfriend, a guy called Mr. Harnett, was mutilated and left with 24 knife wounds. Osborne also graped another woman who he had held captive in the house. Osborne got his whole life order in early 2024. Damien Bendall committed his horrendous acts under the influence of drugs. He murdered, first of all, his girlfriend, who was pregnant with his child. Then he murdered her 2 young children. And then he murdered the school friend of one of the children who was staying over. This all took place in the Derbyshire town of Killamarsh in September 2021. He also confessed to the grape of one of the children, a little girl.
I don't know what happened. Alright, come to me. Mate, have you got anything on you that you shouldn't have?
No, there's no weapons or nothing.
Right.
Right, do you just want them to do your coat? Have you armed yourself?
Yeah.
You have?
Have you stabbed yourself, mate?
I can see blood on your hands.
Yeah.
Anywhere else?
Just my chest, 4 inches in with a bread knife.
Can we have a look?
Yeah, and one on the stomach. I bled quite.
Right, do you want?
Yeah. Can we go down
No, just stay there.
I just don't want to be in front of everyone.
Alright, just go on the corner.
Just walking wounded at the minute.
Alright, stand here. Stay here.
Right.
So
We told you, I know what's going to happen to you now, mate.
Well, I know it's going to happen
just
when you go to prison, obviously, but again.
Why? What have you done? Have you done something to anyone else?
Yeah.
What have you done?
I've murdered 4 people.
07:47 hours. I'm arresting you on suspicion of murder. You don't have to say anything, but it may harm your defence. Do not mention when questioned something you later rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence. Your arrest is necessary to protect you from harm, to prevent your disappearance, for a prompt and effective investigation. Okay? We're going to get you up, we're going to put you in the back of the van.
Recently, he's been involved in some kind of violence at the prison that he is being held in. It was over some workshop equipment, some, really harmful equipment, and he attacked someone with it. When I heard about that on TikTok, I looked at the comments of the TikTok and everyone was saying the same thing. Why are you letting somebody who killed 4 people, including 3 children, anywhere near workshop tools that can cause harm or death to others? Bendall got his whole life order in 2022. Eerily enough, before jointly murdering a lady called Quen and Gok Nguyen in August 2017, Stephen Irwin and William McFall had each murdered a pensioner and done time for that. They got Miss Nguyen to come to a property under false pretences, and then Unwin graped her, and then afterwards he drove her to a remote location and set her on fire. He then drove to a cash machine and withdrew money from her bank account while the lady burned. The 2 men got their whole life order in 2018. 3.3 million quid. That's the estimated amount that triple murderer and triple whole life order prisoner, 26-year-old Kyle Clifford, is expected to cost the taxpayer over the next 60 years. At the time of this recording, this makes the The most expensive prisoner in the UK. Clifford's failed suicide attempt, which he made just moments before his arrest in July 2024 for the murder of his ex-girlfriend, her mother and her sister, and which left him paralysed from the chest down, means for a start that in prison, where he will be for the rest of his up life, he will need a specially adapted cell to accommodate his wheelchair. There will be the cost of the employees that will be taking him to the toilet and washing him, the cost of the nurses, the doctors, the physiotherapists and the occupational therapists that he will need as well. As regards nurses, they will probably be the ones to be taking the killer from day to day for a shit and scrubbing him clean. Instead of costing the taxpayer the already pretty shocking £55,000 a year that the average prisoner costs, Clifford, who caused his physical disability, as I say, by shooting himself with the same crossbow that he used to commit 2 of his 3 brutal murders, is set to cost at least twice that. Clifford committed his triple murder on the 9th of July 2024. But before he perpetrated those 3 killings, he already had murder in his family. In 2017, Bradley Clifford, Kyle Clifford's brother, who was then aged 23, punched as many as 9 times a young man who, having just been sent flying from the pillion seat of a motorbike, which had just been deliberately hit by a car, was lying on the road with catastrophic injuries. As he savagely pounded the youth with his fists, Bradley Clifford raged at the man that he deserved the beating. The attacker was subsequently sentenced to 23 years for murder, 18-year-old Sobhan Khan having later succumbed to his many serious injuries, his motorbike catastrophe, like his beating, having come from Bradley Clifford. To the perpetrator, you see, for breaking the wing mirror of his beloved red Ford Mustang, Mr. Khan had to die. That was his reason for ending the young man's life. You might be inclined to forgive the addiction to videos showing extreme violence that Kyle Clifford developed when he became a trooper in the Queen's Dragon Guards, his very willingness to lay down his life for his country being the reason for your said inclination for forgiveness. Entering into military service is what Kyle Clifford did shortly after his brother's incarceration, and you may be as surprised as I was to learn that having such a close connection to a murderer was no barrier to joining the army. Things may or may not have since changed. Likewise, given the man's willingness to make the ultimate sacrifice for his country, we may well choose to overlook the fact that none of his fellow soldiers liked him. Or we could discover the truth to the man's army career and understand what a sham it actually was.
You have been referred to at times as a former soldier. In many cases that would serve as significant mitigation. Not so in your case, however, as your 2 years in the army included 286 days at home claiming to be ill. You never saw active service, and your utility to the armed forces can be gleaned in a parting comment from your commanding officer that, quote, his character is wholly unsuited to military employment, and he has no care nor concern beyond himself.
In June 2024, after an 18-month relationship with Clifford, in which the man had quickly revealed himself as a bully, a racist, a misogynist and a serial cheat, Louise Hunt, a 25-year-old owner of a dog grooming business and daughter of BBC racing commentator John Hunt, dumped the man. This would have come as a huge relief to Louise's family, who had noticed very early on Clifford's controlling and unreasonable behaviour towards Louise, as well as his rudeness and his arrogance. While Louise and her family were aware from the off of the murder conviction of Clifford's brother, it never crossed their mind for a minute that, as a result of being dumped by Louise, Clifford would arm himself with a crossbow and a kitchen knife and then drive to the Hunt home in Bushey, southeast England, ensure that his ex-girlfriend's father was out because he would never have let Clifford in, and then trick Louise's mother into letting him in, enabling him to unalive her, her daughter Louise and her daughter Hannah, aged 28. This is precisely what unravelled on the afternoon of the 9th of July 2024. Clifford having told Louise's mother, Carol, when she answered the door to him, that he just wanted to return some of Louise's belongings and that he was grateful to have ever been accepted into their family. Seconds after Carol let him in, she was lying on the floor, dying from the many stab wounds that Clifford had inflicted on her with the kitchen knife that he had brought with him. Clifford's subsequent grape of Louise was his way of hurting and dominating her before unaliving her, which he did with his crossbow after keeping her tied up with duct tape for around 2 hours, just as her sister was approaching the house. In court, the judge observed that Louise would most probably have come to realise before she was unalived that Clifford had already unalived her mother, Louise having been working from a building out in the garden when that unaliving took place, and having been as such wholly oblivious to it. When, at around 6:54 p.m. that evening, Clifford left the house, Hannah Hunt, who Clifford had just fatally shot with his crossbow, was able to call the emergency services. On arriving, however, they found Hannah unconscious and were sadly unable to revive her. The following day, after a 22-hour manhunt, Clifford was located at a cemetery in the Lavender Gardens area of Enfield, North London. As officers approached the spot in the undergrowth where he was hiding, the man shot himself in the chest with his crossbow. This severed his vital spinal tendons, leaving him paralysed from the chest down. The aim of his act, though, was of course to end his life. However, as we can see, for all the perpetrator's skill at unaliving 3 defenceless and wholly innocent women with total savagery, when it came to unaliving himself, the fucker was totally fucking inept. During his 10-week hospital stay, the man required a 24-hour police guard. While he lay in hospital, the only comments he made were "sorry" and "what I have done is atrocious." For all this apparent remorse, however, when he was finally fit to give an interview, he went no comment all the way through.
Do you accept, Kyle, that based on the evidence, that this is a premeditated murder of 3 people?
No comment.
Do you accept that you have meticulously planned this murder from the moment that you split up Louise?
No comment.
From the moment that she sent you that text message at the end of June, you began to plan her murder? Yes?
No comment.
At the last minute, Clifford changed his plea from not guilty to guilty as charged. Normally, pleading guilty gets a defendant a shorter sentence than the one that they would have got if they'd gone to trial and been found guilty. Clifford got 3 whole life orders, the judge duly condemning the man as a savage, self-entitled dick.
The evidence I have heard shows you to be a jealous man, soaked in self-pity, a man who holds women in utter contempt. This is no occasion to subject the family and friends of your victims to any delay or suspense. I therefore make clear at once that for each of these 3 murders, the sentence will be one of life imprisonment with a whole life order. That means a sentence from which you will never be released.
His sentencing took place in March 2025. From being a family of 5, the Hunt family is now reduced to a father and a daughter only, there being, as you can see, a 3rd daughter. These are the words of the father, John, in his victim impact statement.
When I was first invited to provide a victim impact statement, I initially misunderstood its purpose. Do I really need to detail the impact of having 3/4 of my family murdered? He went on, whatever sentence you're about to receive, whatever misery lies ahead for you in the next 60 years, remember that after your days on earth are done, on your dying day there will be no release for you, Kyle. The screams of hell, Kyle, I can hear them faintly now. They're going to roll the red carpet out for you.
Kyle Clifford became a triple murderer just because he got dumped. John William Cooper, who was born in 1944, is also known as the Bullseye Killer, and he's a Welsh serial killer. On the 26th of May 2011, he was given a whole life order for the 1985 double murder of siblings Richard and Helen Thomas, and for the 1989 double murder of Peter and Gwenda Dixon. The murders were known in the media as the Pembrokeshire murders or the coastal murders, because that's where the murders took place, and because of those murders, tourism in that area dropped dramatically. Cooper was also sentenced for the grape of a 16-year-old girl and a sexual assault on a 15-year-old girl, both of those attacks having been carried out while a group of 5 teenagers were held at gunpoint in March 1996 in a wooded area behind the Mount Estate in Cooper's hometown of Milford Haven in Pembrokeshire. There was literally nothing nice or good about this man. He actually got his first police records between the ages of 17 and 21, and it was for theft of a vehicle, assaulting a police officer, being drunk and disorderly, and ABH. His marriage came shortly after this point, 1966 being when, decades later, his wife died. Knowing as they then did that her husband was a killer, people feared that Cooper had offed her. The woman's death, however, came from natural causes. Giving his daughter away at her own wedding could well be the only kind thing that Cooper ever did for anyone. His son, who he used to batter and bully, having long since disowned him. Cooper once took aim at his son, literally, with a gun and pulled the trigger, delighting, no doubt, in his son's evident fear, which came from his belief that the gun was loaded, which, thankfully, it wasn't. In 1978, Cooper won all of 90,000 quid, around £500,000 in today's money, and he won that on the pools, while also winning a £4,000 car, an Austin Princess, on a Spot the Ball competition. A few short years after, though, every last penny was gone, Cooper having blown it all on racing bets and having become a heavy drinker during this period as well. As for Cooper's double murder of 1989, his second one to remind you, the police could have nabbed the perpetrator within days of discovering the bodies of Mr. and Mrs. Dixon. For some reason, however, they swallowed Cooper's story that the wedding ring that he had recently sold was none other than his very own. They don't seem to have asked to see a picture of it or have tried to trace the buyer, for instance. Probes, which may well have led them to learn that the ring in question was, of course, Mr. Dixon's. Police had seen that it was missing from the murder victim's finger. Cooper was in prison for numerous burglary offences when, in 2006, the police conducted a cold case review of the murder of the Dixons. When police revealed to Cooper that they had found Mr. Dixon's DNA on a pair of Cooper's shorts, ones that he had taken out of Mr. Dixon's rucksack and then kept after killing Mr. Dixon, and also on his shotgun, Cooper tried to frame his son. He said that his lad always used to take his clothes and wear them without his permission. Another piece of evidence against Cooper was an artist's impression of the perpetrator, which proved to be almost a direct match with the way the perpetrator looked when he went on the game show Bullseye, the episode in question having aired only days after Cooper murdered the Dixons. Personally, though, I'd say at least 1,000 other men could have been a match for the artist's sketch. Anyway, that's the diabolical story of John William Cooper. For committing 3 murders plus grape, all in a single sitting, Arthur Hutchinson, who was born in Hartlepool, North East England in February 1941, has been locked up since 1983. When, on the 22nd of October 1983, he sighted, in the garden of a home in Dore, South Yorkshire, a large marquee, Hutchinson was on the run. The marquee was where 59-year-old Basil Lankner, his 55-year-old wife Avril, their 28-year-old son Richard and their 18-year-old daughter Nicola had, earlier that day, held the wedding party of the couple's other daughter, Suzanne. After entering the marquee in search of food, Hutchinson broke into Richard's bedroom and stabbed him to death. When the perpetrator was confronted by Richard's father, Basil, at the top of the stairs, he stabbed him as well, the man ending up at the bottom of the stairs after falling backwards. Hutchinson then stabbed Richard's mother, Avril, in the downstairs bedroom before going back upstairs and graping Nicola at knife point, first in her room, then out in the marquee, and then once again back in her room. To get Nicola from her room to the marquee and back again, the perpetrator had walked her past the dead bodies of her mother, father and brother. After being caught on the 5th of November 1983, shockingly, the perpetrator was only sentenced at the conclusion of his trial that was held in September 1984 to 18 years. Thankfully, the Home Secretary of the time, Leon Britton, subsequently upgraded the sentence to a whole life term, and Hutchinson's many appeals against that tariff have all failed. Wilbert Anthony Dyce got away with the murders of a mother and her 2 children for nearly 3 decades. Dyce was 26 when he graped and stabbed Norma Richards, 27, to death after following her home from a nightclub on the 17th of July 1982. He then stabbed her 9-year-old daughter Samantha to death and drowned 7-year-old Siretta in the bath at their flat at 54 Kingsgate Estate, Dalston, East London. Dyce, whose own mother lived just a few hundred yards away, left the scene after daubing the NF for National Front symbol on the walls in an attempt to make the murder look like a racist murder. The bodies of all 3 victims were found 2 days later on July the 19th by their grandmother Myra and by the stepsister of the 2 girls, Rodine. The murder weapon may have been a 19th century bayonet, which was kept in the flat as an ornament. Nobody suspected Dyce's involvement, his name was never given to the police, and he was never interviewed. It was only during a review in 2009, which was sparked by a query from a journalist researching a book about the footballer Laurie Cunningham, the brother of Norma's partner, that his DNA was matched to semen samples that were found at the scene. Confronted with this damning evidence, Dyce claimed that he had had sex with Norma Richards in the toilet of a nearby club hours before her death. He was convicted, however, of all 3 murders on the 17th of December 2010 after a trial at the Old Bailey. The court heard that he had also sexually attacked 2 other women in their own homes and stabbed his ex-wife. At the age of 54, Dyce was jailed for life with a whole life order. In 2013, Jamie Reynolds, who was born around 1990, murdered the 17-year-old daughter of a police officer and then had SEX with her dead body. And he did all of this after spending months writing a twisted tale describing how he would do it. He first of all built a so-called hanging mechanism in the loft hatch of his parents' home over in Wellington in Telford. And then at some point he was able to somehow lure Georgia Williams, an A-level student, over to his home for a fake photo shoot. Georgia agreed to pose for Reynolds while wearing lipstick, stilettos and leather shorts, which he had bought on the internet. In a picture found by the police, Georgia can be seen grinning at the camera with a noose around her neck on the landing of the house. And then moments later, Reynolds throttled his victim with the rope before hanging her from the noose in order to fulfill his sick fantasies, which had been fueled by his obsession with violent pornography. When he was caught, Reynolds was examined by psychiatrists who all agreed that if he hadn't been caught, he would have gone on to become a serial killer. He got his whole life order in 2013. As for Viktor Dembovskis, for some reason, despite his history of grapes in his home country, Latvia, the man had been allowed to remain in the UK. Sadly for Jeshma Ray Thatha, a 17-year-old A-level student from Harrow in northwest London, this enabled the man in May 2005 to repeatedly grape her and then stab her to death on her way home from school. While the perpetrator got his whole life order for his atrocious acts against Jeshma in 2006, the effects of those acts didn't end. Unable to cope with what had happened to her big sister, you see, in 2009, at the age of 15, Jeshma's kid sister, Nishma, threw herself off the top of a car park and died from her resultant injuries. John Taylor got his first life sentence for a string of sexual offences that he committed from 1977 to 1987, and they include some of the most horrendous types of sexual offences that there are. Alongside those offences were grievous bodily harm and many, many other offences. He got his second life sentence in June 2002 for the murder of Leanne Tiernan, and that second life sentence, in fact, turned into a whole life order imposed on him in 2018. Born in 1960, in 1995, David Tiley got 6 years for double grape. In March 2007, no more than 2 weeks after getting out, after getting into an argument with his fiancée, Susan Hale, in which she taunted him about something from his past, he stabbed the woman to death. This took place at their home in Southampton, South England. Susan was a disabled person, which was due to a degenerative brain disorder that made it really hard for her to walk. 8 days later, when Susan's carer, a married mother of 2 called Sarah Merritt, came round to give Susan a bath, Tiley tied her up, took her bank card and then went out and got 150 quid out with it. On returning, the man graped Mrs. Merritt and then stabbed her to death. He got his whole life order in June 2007. Born in 1977, in 1993, John McGrady was sent to prison for 5 years for false imprisonment of a young woman that he had abducted at knife point as she got off a bus. In 1998, the man was jailed for 6 years for graping and essaying 2 women that he knew. On the 25th of September 2005, Rochelle Holness, a 15-year-old girl who was a neighbour of McGrady's, disappeared after going out to call her boyfriend from a phone box near her home in Lewisham, South London. It's thought that McGrady abducted Rochelle from the phone box at knife point before taking her back to his home, where he strangled and dismembered her. 3 days after doing that, he confessed to his girlfriend what he'd done and then slashed his wrists in a suicide bid, which failed. He got his whole life order in May 2006. Leroy Campbell embarked on his career as a violent criminal with the offence of rape. He did 17 years for the grape of a woman. After that, when he got out, he then graped as well as murdered a nurse called Lisa Skidmore by strangling her with a ligature. This was in Bilston. He also then tried to murder the woman's mother by strangling her with a vacuum cord. Then he tried to cover his tracks by setting fire to Lisa's room and leaving items with other people's DNA on them. The man had only been released 4 months earlier after the 17 years that he did for grape. He got his well-deserved whole life order in 2017. On the 3rd of April 2010, John Maden, who had an obsessive interest in pornography that related to you-know-what-ophilia, grape and torture, called his sister Lynn and asked for Lynn's daughter, his niece, to go to his home in Cheetham Hill in order to babysit his 10-year-old daughter. When Tia arrived, which was at 3 p.m, her uncle drugged her with an antipsychotic tranquilizer that he himself had been prescribed. After doing so, he inflicted a horrific catalogue of injuries on his niece before stabbing her and then strangling her with a ligature made from a guitar string. At 3:45 p.m, Maden phoned the 999 emergency services and said, quote, "Hi, I would like to report a murder," unquote. And then when he was asked by the operator what had happened, or rather why he had done what he had done, he answered, quote, "Because I felt like it," unquote. He got his whole life order in October 2010. For many years, David Fuller, who was an electrician in a hospital in Kent, which has since been closed down, got away with the 2 murders that he committed. They were of Wendy Nell, who was 25, and Caroline Pearce, who was 20. He committed those down in Royal Tunbridge, Wales. They were known as the Bedsit murders. he was eventually caught for those murders and given a whole life order, and along with that he was given a sentence of 12 years for the SA of more than 100 female corpses in 2 hospital mortuaries, and he did those offences over a period of 12 years. The judge of Fuller's trial said that Fuller, quote, had no regard for the dignity of the dead, unquote. Fuller's whole life order came in 2021. While Simon Wilson, who was born in 1957, is a murderer, his whole life order doesn't come directly from his act of murder. On being moved to Australia with his family at the age of 2, Wilson racked up a total of 77 offences over there, including 6 grapes and a vicious murder. After serving 16 years in prison for that murder, in January 2008, at 50, Wilson was deported back to England. On his return to the UK, however, the man learned that his case was found not to meet the criteria to put him under any control orders, which left him free to do whatever he wanted and go wherever he wanted. Likewise, the authorities were powerless to force Wilson to sign the SHE ex-offender register, the man choosing not to do so on a voluntary basis. A few months on, in September 2008, the man was given a whole life order after pleading guilty to attempted grape, wounding with intent, and causing a person to engage in sexual activity without her consent. In April 2008, you see, Wilson attacked a 71-year-old woman, who we'll call Lucy, on her doorstep in central London, slashing her across the face and across her body as he tried to grape her. Lucy had to be hospitalised for 5 days and was left so badly injured from the attack that she was at risk of losing the use of one of her arms. Wilson lost his 2009 appeal against his whole life order. As a convicted murderer, however, he isn't quite in the same category as either Jeremy Wing or another non-murderer whole lifer, John Wass, who you're soon to meet. John Duffy is a grapist and murderer whose close friendship with his partner in his evil crimes, David Mulcahy, stemmed from their shared Irish Catholic heritage. Born in 1958 in the Republic of Ireland, Duffy, whose family moved over to England in search of work, instantly hit it off with Mulcahy in the year 1970 at Haverstock School in North London. One night in October 1982, the two, who were now young men of course, graped a 21-year-old woman after jumping out on her as she walked home and then putting a knife to her throat. They then forced her into the garden of an empty house before forcing themselves onto her. In the course of 1983, the two men, who, by this point, were both married, committed no fewer than 18 grapes, their victims being pounced on late at night in streets mainly near railway stations in Hampstead, Barnet and other areas around North London. This led to the two men gaining the media dubbing of the railway grapists. The two men continued their grapes through to 1985, committing on one occasion 3 grapes in a single night in the said year, Hendon being where. In December of the said year, the two men strangled 19-year-old Alison Day to death with her own blouse near Hackney Wick, East London. They did that after graping her. In April 1986, they did the same to 15-year-old Marta Tamboza, sorry if I mispronounced that name, in West Horsley in Surrey, southeast England. The following month, they kidnapped 29-year-old Anne Locke after she got off a train at Brookmans Park railway station in Hertfordshire and then graped her before murdering her. Duffy later offered a simple explanation for the two men's escalation to the offence of murder. Grape alone had stopped satisfying them. When, on the 26th of November 1986, Duffy was arrested while following a woman in a secluded park, the perpetrator having taken to committing grape alone on some occasions, you see, his 3 murders, along with some of his grapes, rapidly unravelled. What he kept secret for years, however, even after the 30-year prison term that he got in early 1988 was later upgraded to a whole life order, was the identity of his accomplice. Mulcahy, though, a father of 5, has been locked up since 2001 and isn't expected to get out even when he's done his 30-year minimum term, his former partner in grape and murder having grassed him up, you understand, in 1997. If this video has gripped you, I recommend you to watch this one next. I'll meet you there.